It was the kind of love story people envy, or so it seemed. Catherine and Daniel Rivers were the picture of perfection. High school sweethearts who defied the odds, built a life of luxury together, and became the it couple in their affluent Atlanta suburb. Catherine, a former model turned interior designer, had grace and charm. Daniel, a rising real estate mogul, had ambition and charisma. Together, they had everything: wealth, beauty, success. But behind their glossy smiles was a darkness that no one saw coming. It began with whispers, quiet ones. Catherine's sudden withdrawal from friends. The way she flinched when Daniel reached for her. The way her laugh no longer reached her eyes. Most dismissed it. After all, who would dare question a power couple like the Rivers? But the truth was, Catherine was sleeping with the enemy. They met when they were just 16. He was her protector, her first love. By 23, they were married. A fairy tale until the mask slipped. Daniel changed. Behind closed doors, he was controlling, jealous, manipulative, cruel. Catherine learned to walk on eggshells. Every smile, every compliment from another man, even a glance at her phone, was grounds for suspicion. Daniel's love turned possessive, his passion violent. And Catherine? She became a prisoner in her own life. Still, she stayed. Until one day, a chance meeting changed everything. Julian Marks was nothing like Daniel. A gentle, soft-spoken architect with a tragic past of his own, Julian had been hired to help Catherine redesign a client's home. Their connection was instant but subtle. Glances turned into conversations. Conversations into confessions. And soon, confessions into stolen moments. Julian gave Catherine something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. But affairs rarely stay hidden. And this one was about to explode. On July 14th, 2023, Daniel confronted Catherine. She denied everything. He didn't believe her. 2 days later, Julian vanished. No one had seen him since a late meeting with Catherine at a cafe downtown. His car was found abandoned near a park. His phone dead. The last message sent was to Catherine. "I think he knows." When police questioned her, Catherine claimed she hadn't seen Julian that night. She played the role of the grieving woman caught between two men. But detectives noticed the cracks, the inconsistencies, the nervous glances, the trembling hands. And soon, the story unraveled. Detectives dug deeper. What they found was a trail of surveillance footage, deleted messages, and financial records pointing to a sinister scheme. Daniel had hired a private investigator weeks before Julian disappeared. He knew, and the evidence painted a chilling picture. Daniel confronted Julian that night. There was no fight, no screaming, just silence, and then nothing. But with no body, there was no crime. Until a hiker stumbled across a shallow grave near Chattahoochee River, 35 miles from where Julian was last seen. Inside, a man's body wrapped in a blood-stained tarp. Dental records confirmed it: Julian Marks. Catherine collapsed when she was told. Her tears were real, but so were the secrets she held. Daniel was arrested on suspicion of murder. His trial became national news. Catherine testified against him, revealing years of abuse, manipulation, and fear. The world saw her as the brave survivor, the woman who found love and lost it all. But justice has layers. As prosecutors dug into phone records, a hidden folder was found on Catherine's encrypted cloud account, containing voice memos. One of them was recorded the night Julian disappeared. Her voice was trembling, terrified, but what she said turned everything upside down. "If he finds out we planned this, we're both dead." Planned. This wasn't just an affair. This was premeditation. Under pressure, Catherine cracked. She confessed. She and Julian had plotted to leave Daniel. Not just leave, but take half his empire. Catherine had forged legal documents, rerouted assets, and planned to disappear. But when Julian hesitated, fearful of crossing a man like Daniel, Catherine made a fatal choice. She lured Julian to the cafe, and Daniel was waiting. What happened next wasn't just jealousy. It was an orchestrated murder. But here's the twist. Catherine had planned for Daniel to kill Julian. She knew Daniel's rage. She manipulated it. She turned his own darkness against him. Julian's death was never about love. It was about escape. In court, Daniel and Catherine turn on each other like rabid dogs. The testimonies were vicious. Secret recordings, love letters, threats. It was a war of monsters. The jury watched in horror as the mask of the perfect couple dissolved completely. In the end, both were found guilty, Daniel for second-degree murder, Catherine for conspiracy and obstruction. Daniel was sentenced to 25 years. Catherine, 15. Julian's family wept, not just for the son they lost, but for the truth that was buried with him. A story that began with passion ended in betrayal, greed, and blood. They say love can blind you, but in this case, it destroyed everyone in its path. Catherine's need for control, Daniel's need for possession, Julian's desire to save someone who didn't want saving. Justice was served, but at what cost? And yet, the story isn't over. Because from behind bars, Catherine has started talking, revealing another name, another secret, another plan. And this time, someone else may be in danger. Next time, on Sleeping with the Enemy, the deadly truth uncovered. What did Catherine confess in her final letter? Who else was involved in Julian's death? And could there be another body waiting to be found? Justice has many faces, and sometimes the deadliest one smiles the sweetest. Prison bars have a way of breaking silence. 6 months into her 15-year sentence, Catherine Rivers did the unthinkable. She started talking. It began with a letter, handwritten in slanted script on a stained piece of prison-issue paper. It was addressed to the lead detective on Julian Mark's case. The contents? A bombshell confession. You think you know everything. You don't. Julian wasn't the only one who died because of Daniel, and he wasn't the only man I loved. Catherine Rivers. Her words were cryptic, but what followed was worse. A location, coordinates scribbled at the bottom of the letter. A forested area on the outskirts of Blue Ridge, Georgia. Remote, rugged, and quiet. Too quiet. Detectives followed the lead, expecting it to be a desperate grab for attention. But as the search team combed through the dense woods, a cadaver dog began to bark near a decaying tree stump. An hour later, shovels hit bone. A second body, male, estimated dead for almost 3 years. No ID, no phone, just a rusted silver ring and the faint remains of a rope tied to his ankles. Who was he? And why had Catherine kept this secret for so long? 3 years earlier, before Julian, before the murder trial, before the media circus, there was another man. Ethan Hale, a freelance journalist working on a book about corruption in the Atlanta real estate industry. He had been interviewing developers, moguls, and big names, including Daniel Rivers. According to Catherine's confession, Ethan had stumbled on something buried in Daniel's business deals. Money laundering, illegal land acquisitions, fake shell companies, and he had come to Catherine, off the record, not for information, but protection. They met several times, she said, talked for hours. One night, after too much wine, their professional relationship blurred into something more intimate. For the first time, Catherine felt needed. Not for her looks, not for her status, but for what she knew. And then, Ethan disappeared. Until now, no one had connected the dots. Detectives confronted Daniel in prison. He refused to speak. But behind his cold silence was a storm. Because forensic analysis confirmed the remains were Ethan's. The silver ring matched photos from his missing persons file. A hair strand embedded in the rope. A match to Daniel. But that wasn't the most chilling discovery. Ethan's camera was found buried nearby. It had been smashed, water damaged beyond repair, except for one memory card, somehow still intact. And on that card was a video, a recording Ethan made the day he vanished. The footage was shaky. Wind blew through the trees as Ethan spoke directly into the lens. If anything happens to me, look at Daniel Rivers. He's hiding more than dirty money. He's hiding bodies. I'm meeting Catherine tonight. She says she has proof. I just hope I make it home. Ethan Hale. He never did. What Ethan didn't know was that his meeting with Catherine had already been compromised. She had told Daniel everything. Why? According to her confession, I was scared. Daniel had threatened to kill my sister. He said if I didn't get rid of Ethan, he'd bury me too. I never thought he'd actually do it. I just thought he'd scare him. But the evidence said otherwise. Ethan had been tied up, tortured, executed. This wasn't fear. This was conspiracy. Catherine claimed to be a victim. But how many victims did she help create? She wept on the stand. She painted herself as a woman trapped in a cycle of abuse. But behind her tears were carefully laid traps. Secrets layered under lies. She played both sides, Daniel's puppet and Ethan's lover. And when things got too close, she let them die for her freedom. Detectives now had a new case, double homicide. And with the new evidence, prosecutors reopened Catherine's file. She wasn't just a co-conspirator anymore. She was an accessory to two murders. But just when you think the story can't go deeper, it does. Because there's one more person Catherine mentioned in her letter, a name that made investigators freeze. Layla Rivers, Daniel's younger sister. Quiet, polite, always in the background. She had been present during several key events, family dinners, business functions, even the night Daniel and Catherine threw a party hours before Ethan disappeared. And now, Catherine was claiming Layla helped cover it up. She was the one who helped move the body. She knew what we did. She even picked the burial spot. Check her cabin in Blue Ridge. Catherine's second confession. Detectives rushed to Layla's secluded cabin. Inside, they found maps, marked coordinates, and something even more disturbing. A hidden storage compartment under the floorboards. Inside, folders, burner phones, a bloody hammer wrapped in plastic, and a handwritten note in Catherine's handwriting. He knew too much. We had no choice. DNA results are pending. But the implication is clear. There may be more graves, more secrets, more lies. And Layla? She's vanished. No one has seen her since the day Catherine's new letter surfaced. What began as a love triangle ended as something darker, a web of control, deceit, and carefully orchestrated death. Justice isn't just about verdicts. It's about truth. And the truth is still surfacing. Catherine Rivers wasn't just sleeping with the enemy. She became one. Who is Layla Rivers really? What's hidden in the burner phones? And is there another victim yet to be found? Because in this story, the past never stays buried, and the dead are still talking. It's been 3 weeks since Layla Rivers disappeared. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of questions. 3 weeks of fear. Because when people vanish in the middle of a murder investigation, it's rarely without reason. And in Layla's case, that reason was buried beneath years of secrets, sealed under layers of family loyalty and blood. To the outside world, Layla Rivers was the forgotten sibling, the quiet one, a florist who preferred wild gardens to wild parties, a soft voice in a family full of power, wealth, and shadows. But investigators were now uncovering a different picture, a picture that Catherine painted in vivid, haunting detail. Layla wasn't innocent. She was the mastermind. Daniel listened to her. He feared her. Catherine Rivers. At first, detectives dismissed it as another attempt to shift blame, until they dug deeper into Layla's financials. Her name appeared on the registration of a shell company tied to Daniel's illegal real estate empire. But more troubling, she had received over $900,000 in quiet transfers over a 2-year span, money that coincided with 2 key disappearances, Ethan Hale and another. Meet Mariah Clark, age 24, Layla's former assistant, reported missing in 2019. Never found. Her case went cold. Her last known location, the Rivers estate. At the time, no one linked her disappearance to Daniel or Layla. She was dismissed as another runaway in a broken world. But Catherine had something different to say. Mariah found something she shouldn't have. Layla told me she tried to blackmail her. Said Mariah would end everything unless she got a cut of the money. That was the first time I saw Layla angry. Scary angry. Catherine Rivers. Armed with this new lead, authorities returned to Layla's cabin in Blue Ridge. This time, they brought a forensic team with ground-penetrating radar. The results chilled everyone present. It was far more dangerous than anyone imagined. A break came when Layla's journal led authorities to an abandoned warehouse in Savannah. Hidden beneath the floorboards, they uncovered a safe. Inside, the tape. And it was worse than they feared. Men in suits, known political figures, international dealers, Harold Rivers at the center, laughing, discussing assassinations, bribes, human trafficking, and next to him, a young Catherine, barely 20, smiling. She wasn't just a bystander. She was in it. And then came the final line in Layla's journal. Just 7 words. The tape isn't the end. I am. Investigators now realize something chilling. Layla was orchestrating everything from the shadows. She led them to the bodies. She gave them just enough breadcrumbs. And now, with the tape exposed and her siblings in ruins, Layla Rivers had disappeared, not out of fear, but by design. Because in a game of deception, she didn't just play to win. She played to erase the board. Daniel now faces 2 consecutive life sentences. Catherine, indicted for conspiracy and obstruction, awaits trial. Their father, Harold Rivers, died 2 years ago. His crimes buried with him. Until now. But Layla? She remains a ghost. A woman shaped by a broken dynasty and determined to burn it all down. But just when the case seemed closed, a new video surfaced on the dark web. Grainy, untraceable, uploaded from an unknown IP. Layla, staring directly into the camera. You found the tape. Good. But you still don't understand. You think this ends with the Rivers? You haven't even scratched the surface. She leans forward. There are more. So many more. And now, it's your turn to run. The screen cuts to black. A message flashes. Part 5. The Blood Network, coming soon. Because the truth isn't just deadly, it's contagious. The dark web video sent shockwaves across law enforcement agencies worldwide. Layla Rivers, thought to be hiding or dead, was very much alive, and she wasn't finished. You found the tape. Good, but you still don't understand. You think this ends with the Rivers? You haven't even scratched the surface. She was taunting them, and the message was clear. This was bigger than a family. This was a network. As investigators pored over Layla's journal, they began connecting names she had scribbled in the margins. Many they'd never heard of. Most were aliases, but a few, real, powerful. One name stood out. Ambassador Julian Merrick, a former UN diplomat turned philanthropist, beloved publicly, quietly revered in political circles. And then, hidden in a footnote on page 78 of Layla's journal, a line written in smudged ink. Julian was the first one Daddy trusted. He built the ladder. We just climbed it. Suddenly, this wasn't about exposing a crime family. It was about unraveling a criminal empire, spanning continents, disguising itself behind humanitarian work, offshore accounts, and elite influence. They called themselves the Blood Network. A second video surfaced, this time not on the dark web, but anonymously emailed to Interpol, MI6, and the FBI. It featured hidden footage of a gala in Dubai, high-ranking politicians, tech moguls, oil tycoons. In the center, smiling and toasting champagne, was Julian Merrick, and seated beside him, Catherine Rivers, 2 years before her arrest. Layla wasn't just leaking breadcrumbs anymore. She was detonating bombs, one by one, and the fallout was just beginning. According to data decoded from Layla's USB drive, the Blood Network operated across 5 key industries: arms trafficking, data manipulation, human smuggling, blackmail-based governance, and targeted assassination disguised as accidental deaths. Each branch managed by a different bloodline. The Rivers were just one. There was the Calvins in London, the Rojas family in Spain, the Dussault Group in Canada, and a rising faction in Lagos known only as the Architects. And somewhere in the eye of the storm, Layla Rivers was still pulling strings. But why? Why expose a network she was born into? Why start a war she might not survive? The answer came in the form of a name, buried in a sealed envelope Layla had mailed weeks earlier to a journalist in Berlin. Mariah Green, the same woman Ethan Rivers had married, the same woman Catherine helped poison, the woman Layla once wrote about. She was the only pure thing that ever entered our world. She didn't deserve us. I tried to protect her. I failed. That failure, Layla's journal revealed, was her turning point. She would destroy the world her family had built, even if it meant destroying herself. Interpol issued an international red notice for Layla Rivers, charging her with conspiracy, destruction of evidence, and association with a global crime syndicate. But every time they closed in, she slipped away. Rio, Berlin, Istanbul. She was always one step ahead, leaving behind clues, files, and names. She wasn't hiding. She was hunting, taking down members of the Blood Network, one by one. Some were found dead. Some vanished. Others were arrested, but only after Layla exposed them publicly. It became clear she was waging a private war, and the justice system was just trying to catch up. But then a leak. One of the investigators on the task force was feeding intel to the network. A mole, and not just anyone. Detective Janice Vaughn, the same officer who had led the Rivers investigation from the beginning. She had received millions in offshore deposits. In exchange, she'd fed the network information, cover their tracks. And when Layla went rogue, she was ordered to find and silence her. But Layla was ready. A recording sent to the FBI showed Vaughn in a private call with Merrick. She's not afraid anymore, Julian. She's angry. And angry women, they don't play by the rules. Detective Vaughn. That night, Vaughn was arrested. And Merrick? He vanished. At this point, the world was watching. The Rivers were no longer just a family. They were a symbol of corruption, legacy, and the haunting question: how many crimes go unseen? Because the perpetrators were the right clothes, speak the right way, and shake the right hands. Layla had flipped the power dynamic. She was no longer the hunted. She was the storm. But what happens when the storm turns on itself? A third video appeared. Short, grainy, a man bound to a chair, face bloodied, breathing shallow. Behind him, Layla's voice. You thought this was about justice, but you were never just a puppet, Julian. You were the puppeteer. I learned from the best. The camera pans to reveal a blood-red room. And then, gunshots. The screen cuts to black. But the final frame? A single phrase burned into the screen. The heart of the network still beats. For now. And just as authorities tried to trace the video, every major intelligence agency's internal database was hit. A full breach. Files deleted. Identities exposed. Undercover agents compromised. The Blood Network was retaliating. And in the chaos, Layla vanished again. But not before one final act. A flash drive delivered to a small courtroom in Boston, containing 347 names. Judges, CEOs, generals, presidents, and a note. This isn't revenge. This is cleansing. You just have to be willing to see it. Because now, the hunter isn't hiding. She's coming for them all. 347 names, etched in encrypted code, expose the powerful, the protected, and the untouchable. Judges who bent the law, generals who sold wars, CEOs who traded lives for profits, presidents whose hands were slick with secrets. Layla Rivers had cracked open the gates of the underworld. And what poured out was fire. But in lighting the match, she also painted a target on her back. Because now, she wasn't just a whistleblower. She was public enemy number one to the global elite. The international fallout was immediate. Governments scrambled to deny involvement. Networks of power disintegrated. Dozens of unnamed individuals resigned. Several committed suicide. Others vanished overnight. One judge in Moscow was found with his tongue cut out. A media mogul in LA, dead in his penthouse, wrists bound in red silk. Another, a prime minister in Africa, was assassinated in broad daylight. Point blank. No suspects. No motive. Only a note left behind. One down. Many to go. The Blood Network was imploding. And Layla? She wasn't hiding anymore. In the weeks that followed the release, Layla launched her own site on the dark web, Red Echo. There, she posted damning files, videos, and names. Unfiltered, unredacted, unafraid. People hailed her as a hero, a vigilante, the 21st century Robin Hood. But not everyone was cheering. Inside a luxury compound deep in the Swiss Alps, a secret meeting convened. 5 remaining leaders of the Blood Network, including the man who vanished after Part 5, Julian Merrick. He wasn't dead. Layla had staged the execution video to flush the rest of them out. And it worked, because now they were coming for her. Uncovered footage from 2016 showed a young Layla barely 19, at a blood network gathering in Zurich. Silent, observing. Her father, Ethan, stood beside Julian. Proud, Julian raised a glass. This girl will be our legacy. Smarter than her mother, hungrier than her father. One day, she will lead. But that night, Layla saw what they were really celebrating. A child auction, an arms deal, a murder streamed for pleasure. That night broke her. And that night, she began planning everything. She played the long game. She became what they wanted before turning into what they feared. It started in Brussels. A network lieutenant poisoned at a diplomatic dinner. 3 minutes later, his laptop was hacked remotely. Files leaked instantly. Then in Tokyo, a tech giant was exposed for laundering through child trafficking rings tied to Julian Merrick. The next morning, his private plane exploded midair. The world watched in real time. And at every scene, every crime, Layla's digital signature, a blood-red wolf. Back in a maximum security prison in New York, Catherine Rivers watched the news in silence. She hadn't spoken in over 6 months. But now, she asked for an interview, with a single condition. I'll only speak to Agent Keller. Keller had led the original Rivers case. During the interview, Catherine smiled for the first time since her arrest. You think she's trying to burn the world, don't you? Keller stayed silent. Catherine leaned forward. She's not. She's cleaning it. But you're all too blind to see. She is what we made her. Then Catherine whispered a final message. You have 3 days. Then everything changes. On the 3rd day, just before midnight, a message appeared on Red Echo. The giants fall at dawn. And fall they did. A coordinated cyber attack wiped the financial records of 5 offshore banks. $3.1 billion, stolen from blood network accounts, was rerouted. Where? Children's hospitals, human rights groups, whistleblower protection agencies. And as dawn broke, Julian Merrick was captured by Layla in a warehouse in Serbia. Stripped of power, bloodied, chained to a chair, she streamed the interrogation live to over 80 million dark web users. Julian begged, cried, screamed. Layla? Silent, until she asked one question. How does it feel to be powerless after a lifetime of puppets? Before law enforcement could reach the scene, Julian was gone. Only a video remained. His chair empty, the chains cut, and a final message on screen. The giants fell, but monsters crawl beneath. Interpol launched a global manhunt. Again, but this time, it wasn't just for Layla. It was for the remnants of the network, now turning on each other, desperate to reclaim control. A world once ruled in shadows was now engulfed in chaos. And Layla? She had disappeared. Until, 2 weeks later, at the Vatican, a surprise confession. A priest, racked with guilt, spilled the truth about a sanctuary fund supporting fugitives tied to the blood network. In exchange for immunity, he handed over a package. Inside, a vial of blood, a thumb drive, and a handwritten note. The final sin must be paid in blood. Layla Rivers rewrote the rules of justice. Not with a gavel, but with vengeance, precision, and fire. Was she a savior? A villain? A ghost of trauma, turned into a weapon? The world debated. But one thing was certain. She didn't just sleep with the enemy. She became their reckoning. The world was on fire, not with bombs or bullets, but with truth. Layla Rivers had done what no one thought possible. She exposed a syndicate so ancient, so embedded in every corner of power, that to pull its roots meant shaking the very foundations of global order. But revolutions come at a price. And Layla was no longer a name whispered in justice circles. She was a legend, a myth, a ghost, hiding in plain sight, until the day she resurfaced to tell the world goodbye. At 7:16 a.m. on a gray London morning, a single envelope arrived at the BBC headquarters. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, a handwritten letter, a locket. The letter read, "To the people I tried to save, and the ones I had to destroy, this is my final confession. Release it. The truth must outlive me. L.R." The BBC debated for hours. Was it real? A trap? But when they played the drive, the answer was undeniable. It was Layla. On screen, Layla sat in a dimly lit room. Her face aged, tired, haunted, but her eyes, still sharp, still unbreakable. If you're watching this, I'm either dead or finally free. You know my story. You know theirs. But what you don't know is the cost. The things I've done in the name of justice. The lives I've taken. The parts of myself I carved away just to stay one step ahead. This wasn't a war I wanted. It was a war I inherited. As the video played, it revealed never-before-seen footage. A U.S. senator giving Layla the classified documents that started all. Catherine Rivers, her mother, meeting with Interpol a year before her arrest, feeding them intel. Julian Merrick's real fate, executed by his own lieutenants when they discovered he was turning state's witness to save himself. But the biggest twist? Layla had a daughter. The locket in the envelope contained her photo. She's hidden, far away, with a new name. And when she asks who I was, let her believe I was a villain. Because I chose this hell, so she wouldn't have to live in it. As the video went viral, protests erupted worldwide. More arrests, more resignations, countries severing diplomatic ties. The last pillars of the blood network collapsed. Interpol released a statement confirming the Rivers investigation had dismantled 92% of the known global ring. But Layla's body was never found. No fingerprints, no trace, just a final transmission from her encrypted server. Justice is a wound. It never truly heals, but sometimes it scars over just enough to keep going. Years later, a hiker stumbled upon a small, unmarked stone nestled beneath an old pine. Carved simply, LR. She walked through fire, so others wouldn't burn. DNA confirmed it was her. Layla Rivers buried herself in anonymity. Her enemies were gone. Her mission complete. Her war over. But the ripples of what she did still echo today. In a final prison interview before her death from cancer, Catherine said, "She became the weapon I never could. And in the end, maybe that's the greatest love a mother can show, letting your child surpass your sins." The world remembers Layla Rivers as many things. A vigilante, a traitor, a hero, a murderer, a daughter. But perhaps the truth lies in none of those labels. Maybe she was simply a mirror, reflecting everything we refuse to see. Corruption, greed, silence, and the rare courage to fight back. In a world that feeds on shadows, she became the flame. And though her light is gone, the ashes of power she left behind remind us that one person, just one, can still change everything.